Hi there, hope that you are good and you are very excited to be part of yet another episode of Abuti Rams show. Thank you so much guys for subscribing, for liking, for also sharing the videos that are out there on social media and interacting with our social media platforms as well on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and the other platforms that we have set up. But great news that we have, guys. We are on to our next season, which is season 2 of the Abuti Rams show. But before we could even do that, we were having a very special broadcast that we wanted to do for you, as you can see what is really happening in the country. And today we are sitting down with one of the great people that we're going to be having a conversation with, and I think he'll tell us about himself and also the organization that they represent. I have Mr. Bradley Tshabalala from SASMEC, and I want him to also tell us a bit about SASMEC. But while he's going to be doing that, I want you to continue sharing and liking and comment and give us all the feedback that you want to engage on this conversation that we are having about African economy, and also how do we actually liberate ourselves as a race, particularly the black people in the continent. And thank you so much for continue to showing love into this show. In this episode, we're going to be covering some of the very hot topics that are there in the country, and one of them is xenophobia. And I think we're going to have a frank conversation around this thing. And I know that they're going to be throwing some stones, but we are ready for those stones to come through. And I hope that we can learn from this conversation. So I have none other but Mr. Bradley Tshabalala from SASMEC. And SASMEC is South African Small and Medium Enterprise Corporation. And I want us to have this conversation frankly to talk about what is really happening in the country right now and what is the way forward. So Mr. Bradley, thank you so much for being part of our Abuti Rams show and being part of this conversation. I call you brave because it's a very heated conversation that we normally have. But before we could even do that, I want you to briefly tell us what is SASMEC and what you're all about, and maybe even share who you are and what you do as well.
Okay, no, thank you very much to listeners. And I'm quite happy anyway to have this opportunity, in fact, to talk about SASMEC. SASMEC, the name is South African Small and Medium Enterprise Corporation. And when did it actually start? We started in 1991. You remember in the run-up to 1994?
Yes.
In the height of the struggles when, you remember the consumer boycotts?
Yes.
When, vehicles from the mainstream, could not be allowed to distribute products in the townships and like that.
Yes.
So we realized that we have to do something as black people. In fact, our main problem, I think, in South Africa as black people is that we are 100% consumers and 0% producers. And that's what causes poverty on our side.
Sure.
And we decided that no, we have to produce our own manufacturers in the economic market. So the really important thing, the objective of the organization is to produce black manufacturers in the economic market. And looking into our economy is actually can say it's crippled, or it's a handicapped economy. It's handicapped in the sense that the power of every economy depends on the optimum or maximum utilization of all its resources. But in South Africa, of which anyway, the human resource is principal. Sure. But in South Africa, the majority of the people being the human, resources are not producers. They are just workers.
Sure.
So that's what has handicapped our economy. So if we want to build our economy as black people in South Africa, is that we have to produce our own manufacturers.
And so SASMEC really focuses then on developing people, particularly the black race, into helping them to become producers, and that's your main biggest objective, right? And I want to piggyback on what you just spoke about now with regards to before leading up to 1994, that there was economic protest of some sort that you had. I think it happened in the 80s. Is it in the late 80s?
It happened from the 80s.
Maybe share a little bit of experience about that. Yes. What did that mean actually? Yeah.
To us, I think at that time, the anger was at its peak. Black people in here, that no, we are tired of everything. Now they could not allow, there was what we call consumer boycott.
Yeah.
It's part of the strategy, to say, no, we are what we are. Or black people said, no, they are what they are because of the mainstream economy.
Yes.
This is what I'm saying. Yes,
Sure.
because it was the matter of white and black. They tend to believe that anything, and as we see, black people are not producers. They're not even in business. I think you will remember that to be in business as a black person at that time, it was also, criminalized.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like that. So
Sure.
because of that, the problem is that a black man in South Africa, South African economy, he's just, chained at the lowest rung of the economic ladder.
And when you're looking into our history as a country, and as many people are speaking about, racism, and I think we try to negate the fact that there are still, institutional racism, which we can call it that, institutional racism, which at the core of it is economic. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are shying away from this conversation that, South Africa is still racist economically.
Yes.
Have you identified that as a problem, and what is really happening in South Africa? Are we still a racist nation?
No, many people, I think, you see, once we come into the contradiction of an oppressor and oppressed, mm-hmm. we will realize that when we talk about racism, whether we like it or what, for instance, if we cannot shy away from the fact that South Africa, it's still a comparative race-based society. Those who have wealth, accumulated wealth, they accumulate it on the basis of race. Because the policies of racism, it was that, were against the majority of our people who are poor now. Those who are made poor or who are poor have been made poor by race. Nothing else. We are in this problem as a group, and that group, it's a race group. We cannot run away from that. Even if we are to resolve the problem that we have now, the main thing we cannot leave, we can't say the race issue is obsolete. No, it's not. The fact is that it's actually at the center of it. The only problem that we have now, it's simply that the very same, race, it seems to be hidden, under the rubbles of pseudo, humanity, all these pseudo egalitarian smoke screens of democracy, all that. No, our people do not understand it very well. You see, that is, we cannot run away from race. Sure. And we will always operate as races. South Africa is a nation that has got many races under one government.
Sure.
And each race is looking after itself. Only the black race that serves the universe.
And it's not looking after itself, this black race. And this black race has different nations and nationals in this continent of ours called Africa. There's a term that is thrown out in media and everywhere right now whenever there's a protest in the townships. And this term is called xenophobia. And it is now entrenched into our media space. It is at the core of every conversation right now. Whenever there's a protest for anything like service delivery in the community or something like that, and then it is normally thrown out. And indeed, at some point, to a certain extent, you can see some of the tranches of this, where you find that if there's a protest in service delivery, you have the biggest people who are affected by this are foreign nationals within the community. Can you boldly say South Africans are xenophobic?
Not really, but I would like to start here. Part of race, because that's a very interesting topic. That, we have been made to believe that we are living in a colorblind and race-neutral, melting pot society. It's not true. That is not true. Our people have to understand that. It's not true. All that has been made deliberately, to soften our competitive, impulse and make us fools. You tend not to think that it's a racist society, and yet it is. Let me show you how.
Okay.
If you're talking about racism, it's race that has caused this. For instance, you look at the house. You see the house in which we are.
Yeah, sure.
When it was built, there were architectural drawings for it. Now, that actually guided the foundation of this house. You see? But after building the house, you no longer see the foundation. If you want to change this house, you have to change the foundation.
Correct.
Of this house. Otherwise, the house will be the same. You know, it determines the capacity of, you know, of the house, the size of the house, and the house, how it looks like. Changing the windows will not actually change the house. It will still be the same. Now, the society in which we are is based, or it was formed on the foundations of racism. It's simple. That is why those who have money now have turned, you know, I mean, they still have money and they are rich. Those who do not have money are poor. And why? Because it's a racism that did that. You see, that is
sure.
So that is why I say that we have not changed that. In 1994, that the foundations of this society was not changed. You know, the foundations of this were not changed.
Sure.
Yes, it was that maybe, you know, to open a window there, open the house there, and all that. But we cannot run away from the race part of it.
Sure.
You see, it's important that we have to understand that. Now we are coming to the part of xenophobia and many others. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. What I can tell you is that race, it's, you know, I mean, the competition between races. Because when you talk about racism, to say what is racism? Racism, it's the competitive, the relationships between races that are competing for the control of resources and the ownership of wealth. That is what we call racism. It has got nothing to do with your attitude against the other race.
Okay.
Yes, those are just part of it, but the main thing is race against race. When the other race exploits the other race for its own economic advancement, that is racism.
So it's institutional.
Yes, it's institutional, yes. Yeah. And when racism doesn't know, the child doesn't know, the old person doesn't know anyone, it's a group against the group. That's what we are talking about. You see what I mean? Yeah,
sure.
These are the things that we need to understand for us to be able, you know, I mean, to have a way forward and to have a clear direction of where we are going as black people. That we are not actually living in a race-neutral society, in a color-blind society, and you know, I mean, so we have to. No, race is important. That is why black people have to look at race. Organizing their race. They are in a problem as a group. They will only be out of the problem as a group, not as individuals.
I hear you.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I hear you.
So now, what is happening? You must understand that oppression domesticates. It's part of domestication to be told that you know, we are living in a non-racial and color-blind society and all that. It's not true. Because you cannot be able to stand and do things that are appropriate. Because your understanding of race is wrong.
Okay.
Yes, the main problem with black people now, it's the problem of, you know, I mean, how they understand race. How race actually works. And we must now understand as well that presently, you know, I mean, race is the one that has created the one-ton proverbial and race-based monopoly gorillas. You know, I mean, that renders, you know, that actually renders black people as non-competitive, you know, race midgets. That is what it is. We are midgets to them because we don't have our own gorilla. You know what I'm saying? That is actually fighting on our side. That is assisting us. That is giving us resources to be able to compete. You know, yes, we can see, yes,
sure.
we can talk and say, no, the political oppression is no longer there. Yes,
sure.
Political oppression is due to economic exclusion.
I hear you.
You exclude people, you know, I mean, once they are excluded, you come up with laws that maintain that exclusion. That is politics. Now, politics can go, but the monopoly gorilla, the proverbial monopoly gorilla, you know, race-based monopoly gorilla will still remain. That is what it is. And remember, monopolies determine winners and losers. Then, yes, when you are a loser in a monopoly, or when you are a winner, then this would mean, you know, that monopoly is actually, to block others to come into the mainstream economy or to exclude. Isn't monopoly is to exclude others. So that is how black people are. Politics are not there. But the wealth itself, the disproportionate, ownership of wealth is still in the hands of those who were favored by their racial discrimination and those who have been made poor by racial policies. You see, that's just how it is. Now we are coming to the part of xenophobia. I can say presently we have not, it's difficult for us to find a viable and a lasting solution for what they call xenophobia. The question that, is it xenophobia or what? Now you ask the question as to whether are South Africans xenophobic?
Sure.
Probably not.
But what really caused the conflicts between the migrants and the people in South
Yes,
Africa?
that's what we will talk about.
Sure.
I think that is why we say when we have a problem, we have to analyze it within the proper analytical framework and diagnose the problem.
Sure.
The doctor, for the doctor, the proper medication of a doctor, it's indicated and contraindicated by the proper diagnosis of the patient. You see, for him to be able to give the patient the right medication, it means he has to diagnose first.
Yeah,
Do you see? If we have the wrong diagnosis, we won't have the right medication. And presently, I think with what we call xenophobia, we may call it xenophobia, but I always decide to call it the conflict, between migrants and locals. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yes. But what is happening is that now, is it really xenophobia? That is why we say, let's analyze it within the proper analytical framework. Presently, the fact that we cannot have the proper, a solution for it or a lasting and viable solution, it means that we are analyzing it within the realms of abstraction. So we are not diagnosing it, then we have got a wrong medication, wrong solutions for it. That is why it's lasting for some years now that we have had this, but it doesn't seem that we are able to deal with it. We need to find what you call the root causes of problem. When you have a problem, you must find the root causes of the problem and address the root causes of the problem, not the effects. Presently, we are just addressing the effects. Now to say black people in South Africa are xenophobic, black people in South Africa have been living with migrants.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
In the mines, you see the mine dumps here. You see those mine dumps are from, the ground. Underground here, there were migrants in there, and they are still working in different sectors of the economy. But we never heard about xenophobia up until 1994. So what changed? What has changed? Okay. Then it's difficult for us to say, local people are xenophobic. Let's find the root cause, of these conflicts between migrants and locals. You see, that is just where it is. So, but the other problem is that, you see, these conflicts and the encounters between locals and the migrants, they actually happen in different sectors. I would assume that when we talk about xenophobia now, we are talking about the violent encounters where people are getting killed and people are getting attacked and all that. I think we only find that mainly, not only that, but mainly in two sectors. One, in the economic sector, in the small business economic sector.
Sure.
In the form of spaza shops and all that, where locals say that now they are taking our businesses. Do you see what I mean? And we also find it in labor sector where locals say no, they take our jobs. So I think here to be relevant, because I'm actually working in small and medium, business enterprises where it's affecting us and it's an obstacle, in fact, for development. These encounters and all these conflicts that we have now. Then what is the cause in there? What has caused it? So I will confine myself within that area. This, labor and all that, we can discuss it in other time. But presently, I would like to confine myself within that area, of small businesses. Now, in that small business, we find xenophobia mainly in spaza shops. In the townships, in the townships, in their, in the locals' economic space. Yeah. Because that's where they reside. That's where they are. Then they have built shops and all that. Let me first say, spaza shop. You know what I mean? That concept is local. It's a local concept. Yeah. It's not a foreign thing.
Definitely.
Now, that tells you that spaza shops were actually started by locals. When they could no longer find jobs, in the mainstream economy, what they did was now to sell groceries in their backyards.
Yes.
You see,
yes.
But unfortunately, they were not organized. They were under-resourced. Capital outlay from 500 to 5,000. But that is a very big sector.
True.
That is a groceries sector in South Africa. According to the global, agricultural network, information network, the net sales or the total sales value of groceries national was about 45 billion US dollars. We are talking about almost 700 billion. You see what I'm saying? Yes, that is a very big sector. So now, but when this started, they were making money, but they were micro and very small. When the migrants arrived in here, they organized themselves. Around their national and the religious commonalities.
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? So now they became strong. They outcompeted locals. Now, when you outcompete people from their economic space, you are actually excluding them from their economic space. And they will see it now. They now see it as economic invasion.
Sure.
So when locals could no longer cope with this competition that they had, because they really presented a fierce and toxic competitive atmosphere against locals. Now, by so doing, when they outcompeted them, locals realized that they could no longer continue. They now had to abandon that. They had to retreat and and rent them premises and now settle for rent payment and all that. But you understand that there are resentments. That is why when they fight, others say no, it's because they are immigrants, that they don't even ask migrants as to whether they have got right papers or what. They just attack them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It means there is a deep-seated resentment behind that. That has to be addressed.
Can you then, say in confidence that is it because that spaza shop industry or market was disorganized and unregulated, and that is causing that these migrants who came through and were organized, and but we can't talk about regulations though, but organized and were able to compete, not even compete, but outcompete the locals.
Definitely sure. In fact, there's a study that was actually presented by Mr. Chairman. He has got PhD, in 2011 in the Cape. Researches have been made. That is true. They have been outcompeted. They have actually been, displaced from their economic space. Locals have been displaced from their economic space. You would understand that this is resentment is not unreasonable, because you come into my house, or I come into your house as a guest.
Yep.
Let's look at an example. I would always like to make symbols. I get into your house, I am a guest in your house. Then I find you baking bread, for your living, a livelihood, then selling a loaf for 15 rand or 12 rand. Then when I get into your house as a guest, I also bake bread, I bake bread, sell it cheaper, I sell it 9 rand or I sell it 7 rand. What will I be doing? It's clear, you have to close.
Definitely.
Because no one will buy from me, from you, they will all buy from me. Do you see what I'm saying? That is what is happening. That is truth. So, and it's logical to say someone, the owner of the house, will be against them, the guest. It's natural. We know that. Do you see what I'm saying? I think this is exactly what is happening in this area.
I like that.
Yes. And to say now, that is why with us in South African Small and Medium Enterprise Corporation, because this is an obstacle for development on our side, we say no. All what we have to do is, cooperation and association between locals and migrants. This would mean the government also has to protect people from unfair competition. Those who participate in township economy must do so in terms and conditions that build the local economic capacity. Do you see what I mean?
Does that mean that then they shouldn't be allowed, migrants not to be allowed to operate within the townships?
No, that's not what we are saying. We are not. In fact, it's very much important that they are here. What we are saying is that they have invested. The township groceries total sales value last year was about 7 billion. I'm talking about the spaza shops.
Sure.
Only. Do you see what I'm saying? We have an estimation of about 100,000 spaza shops national.
Okay.
In Gauteng, it's about 40,000. You know, because it's 40% of those spaza shops that are in Gauteng alone. So now you can imagine that these people have rented local, properties. They don't have their own properties.
Sure.
So this tells us that the minimum is paying about 2,000. At average, you would find that spaza shops are paying locals, 200 million national monthly. That feeds almost 500 mouths, hungry mouths of locals. Do you see what I'm saying? So now we can't say they must be expelled. No, they shouldn't be expelled. And what they have done, it's part of, I can't really say it's an income for the township, but I can't say it's an investment. And I've got reasons and reservations why.
Sure.
I believe it's not. I can say it's not investment. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yes. So we must try by all means at the moment that we have to do our things in the way that we will understand. I say it's not an investment. It's an income for the township, but it's not an investment. Why I say it's not investment? When we talk about investment, it means when people invest in an area, it means the area will be better, than before.
Sure.
Yes.
Definitely.
That is investment. But unfortunately, this investment or this income does not have such characteristics. Rather, the characteristics it has, it's a capital drainage from the townships.
No. Dr. Tshabalala, I now want to then stretch your mind a bit, because if you then say we can have these mines that are coming from Europe and America that are doing mining here, they need to have meet those two obligations in terms of creating income for people who are within the local, and number two, leave an investment for that community. For instance, if you have Anglo-American operating within like Beggarsford area, and they have to employ people, so that's creating income for people within the area, but also investments in terms of building schools and infrastructure within the area. If these migrants within the townships are not creating that investment that we're speaking about now, they're only focusing on the income, and we are now saying that it feeds about 500 mouths in Gauteng alone. If we have about
national.
Oh, national. That's 500. Now, why do we still have to have them, and while they're not investing within the local economy?
Now we need to understand, if we are to come up with a sustainable solution, that sustainable solution must be able to solve problems. It should not be at the disadvantage of any. This will mean when they are being expelled, it will mean, remember, if we are to expel that capital, it will mean these families will lose income. The solution will, if we are to offer the solution would mean these people will still have that income. Do you see what I'm saying? So that is why we say this income can be transformed, needs to be transformed, not expelled, but it has to be transformed.
How do we transform it?
It's easy. It's easy. At the moment, let's look at it in this way.
Sure.
We said it's about 7 million, but national. The total groceries, sales value is about 700 billion. But all what the spaza shops can do, it's 7 billion. Do you realize that is only 7%? And the majority of people who are consumers of groceries are black.
Sure.
who are concentrated in the townships.
Definitely.
Do you understand the potential that we have in the township? But all what we have, all what, the income we can have is only 1%. 700 billion and 7 billion, it means it's 1%. And that 1%, 85% of that 1% is controlled by migrants. Do you understand?
How do we
that?
transform that?
Do you see?
How
now,
do we transform
what do we mean is that if we are to start
Sure.
looking at it from our perspective as manufacturers, or producing manufacturers in the small businesses and medium businesses, is that, see, when you produce, the main problem that black people have, the main problem that they have in business is to access markets. They are a market, but that market is not under their control. Do you see what I'm saying? But if black people have access to their own market, they have no access to their own market.
Sure.
Their market, serves other races, not them. Do you see what I'm saying? That's where the whole problem is. So this would mean, let's not expel them, but let's coax them in. Let's come together in association and cooperation. And now remember, it has built a foundation. That 1% is already, a foundation on which we can build our economy, or to have, where we can, I can say, start our own economy. Do you see what I mean? If we expel it, it means we have got nothing. We can't be serious in developing the township economy by expelling almost 85% of the 7 billion. Do you see what I'm saying? Let's not expel it, but let's work in cooperation and association together. For instance, look at the taxi industry. The taxi industry is the only biggest industry in the hands of black people.
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? And we know the political gains and the economic gains that we have had in here, it was through power bargaining. Yes, even in here, we still have to do the same thing. Power bargaining is very much important. That we need to come together. Let them not work in isolation. What they have done now, they have balkanized the townships into hostile, competitive territories, where they are competing among themselves in the exclusion of locals. And by so doing, this would mean locals are sitting at the fringes of the economy and as spectators of the game that they should be playing. Do you see what I mean? That is where the whole problem is. I think we need to face that head on and say, no, in our town, and the government as well has to protect locals. This would mean all people who participate in the township economic space must do so in terms and conditions that build the local economy. Not only them, big businesses that are in the townships also must do the same.
Don't we already have a regulatory framework that speaks towards protecting the local township businesses, especially in Gauteng that you have mentioned about that?
I don't know of any anyway so far.
Sure.
But what I can tell you is that we wouldn't be having the problem that we have now. Do you know what I mean? If we had. But it is important that if we are to build, we have to protect the township economic space.
Sure. That
black people who are living there must be able to create their own jobs there. And that would mean, it's a part of principle, fundamental principles of life, that for a person to live a sustainable life, you must produce more, you must consume, you must produce more than you consume.
Correct.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
But black people consume everything and produce nothing. That is why they are poor. They can only get money when they are employed somewhere, and they come and spend it, all of it is out. There's no money circulating in the township. Do you see what I'm saying? So what we need to do is that locals or black people in there must be respected, and we must leave that economy for them. This would mean the big business that is in the township must be confined in the malls. They must not go outside the malls. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, they should not go outside the malls. And if we are to allow, or government is to allow migrants, yes, as migrants are, we say they should not be expelled, because by so doing it's going to degenerate the township economy, because we will be expelling the income that we have, of which if we to expel, we might not have that anymore. Do you see? So let's reserve, let's keep it, let them work, but it must be in terms and conditions that build the local economy for mutual interest, for them and for locals. And the other thing that I can as well tell you is that when you look at it, you see, the consumer market, you know, for you to produce in the past, you need to have a farm.
Sure.
Yes.
Definitely.
But when you have a farm, you need to rail fence it. Do you see what I mean? You need to own it, you need to control it. Is that not true?
It's not true.
Yes. And if it's true, this would mean, you know, the township people, the only farm they have is their economic space. They can't go anywhere else. That is their economic space. That is the farm they must own. So when they produce, you know, they must produce in their own farm. Do you see? So if the farm is not in their hands, they cannot do anything. They cannot produce anything. Do you see what I mean? That is what is happening. That is why we say that they must be respected. Being in the township, our people need to be respected, and we also need that, you know, we need to work together.
Sure.
So it's important. It's one of the most important things that participation in the township must be in terms and conditions that build the local capacity, not to destroy the local capacity. At the present moment, it's destroying the local capacity.
Okay, Mr. Tshabalala, I hear you. These are like very nice conversations to have, and I need us to be now very practical about this thing. If we are then saying that there isn't, you know, we are the, you know, the market. Did you put it as that we are like the market where we should be working together as well? Number two, we should be working together with these migrants and whatnot. And number three, you spoke about the regulatory framework that needs to be developed in terms of protecting the locals and whatnot. But what is the next step? Let's say, let me give you the task to SASMEC as an organization, and say in the next 5 years from now, how do we you know, bring back the power, and how do we bring black people into the economy that they created in the past, which is the spaza shop or within the township areas? Let me give you that task. What would be like maybe the 3 or 5 key activities that you need to be doing in order for us to reach that utopia?
That is beautiful. Let me tell you, what we envisage now is that if we can bring all these spaza shops together, you know what I mean, and be able to be in control of the farm, you know what I mean, that market, that consumer market. You see what I'm saying? Locals must have access to their own economic space. They must have that. And those who are participating in that, they must cooperate with them and must associate with them. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? So what I can do, I don't even say give me 2 months. I say give us only 3 months and see what we can do. Do you get what I mean? Okay. We already, it's not that we facilitate funding, but for manufacturing, not, you know, for retail, but for manufacturing. Now, you imagine that if in Gauteng alone we have about 40,000 spaza shops as distribution arteries for products produced inside, you know, I mean, in the township. Do you see how big is that market? It's a huge market. We can make millions and millions and employ so many people. Do you see what I'm saying? But presently, the townships are like a dumping ground for products that come from outside.
Not true.
It's a trash bin. It's an economic trash bin. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Yes. So we need to create jobs in the townships. If we are to create jobs in the township and we are serious about that, we need to produce manufacturers in the township as well. Do you see? And that is our area. Black people can produce. It's not that black people can't produce. It's many people tend to think that black people cannot, you know, produce. Black people can produce everything. You know, black people can produce the majority of things that they consume themselves.
Sure.
Even better products. That's what we know because we are producers. Do you see what I'm saying? Sure. So what is important with us now is now to say, let's fight these conflicts, because so long we have conflicts, we will not be able to develop the townships or the township economic, you know, space. Not at all. Yes.
Finally, in fighting the conflicts, we have marches that are taking place, and we have, you know, the Put South Africans First movements that are going across the country right now. And the biggest theme in everything is we are taking them out because they are, and undeniably so, some of them they're involved in criminal activities that we have seen. And there are these movements that are really rife in our communities. Then how do we then, work with these people who come from different countries, and then how do we then champion this big vision of then say we need to work together, because you cannot chase them away. They hold 85% of the that investment or income in the community, in the townships. And what do we do next? What do we do next from?
It's also unrealistic to think that we can lump them together and summarily say that these people are criminals, are wrong, need to take them out. It's not true. They are criminals, amongst us. They are criminals amongst them too.
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? I think when we deal with crime, let's deal with crime as crime.
Okay.
But but also the problem with our people, we need to understand part of the struggles. What struggles, how struggles work. You see, once people feel that they are unfairly treated, people have conscience, and conscience is a moral regulator. So when they feel that they are unfairly treated, they become emotionally upset. And that emotional upsetness creates anger in them. You see? So most of the times, almost everywhere, in the world where there are struggles, the masses will use anger. But the struggles that we will have using anger, reacting spontaneously to the stimuli of, injustice, or oppression, we will not be able to win freedom. You can't win freedom by anger. You can only win freedom by reason. Do you see what by reason? Sure. So those who are using anger to win, they actually, have the struggles, unconscious struggles. It means they are unconscious. Those who use reasoning are conscious. But unfortunately, the overwhelming majority of our people are unconscious. They use anger, and anger cannot win struggles. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's important. So but the conscious are very few. But it's the work of the conscious to make the unconscious to be conscious of their unconscious behavior. You understand that?
You are opening a can of worms, and you're opening a very deep conversation about consciousness, and I think we're going to have another segment about black consciousness.
Yes. That is what what I'm saying is that,
sure.
You see, the thing is that sometimes we use anger, and that anger, it's even easy
sure.
to identify the unconscious struggles. Unconscious struggles, number one, are costly.
True.
They are also destructive, very deleterious. You see, you come and bend. It's like, let me make a symbol to say, okay, there's a snake in the house. There's a snake in the house. Then you say, no, bend the house. Sure. Why don't you, call the snake expert to come and kill the snake or to take it out?
Sure.
Then you say, bend the house. Those unconscious struggles. You find yourself, engaged in unconscious struggles. And unfortunately, we also have unconscious, leaders, who are charismatic leaders.
Sure.
Unconscious. And they're unconscious in the sense that the struggles that they encourage people to have, it's to use anger, not reasoning. Let me show you now. If we say, okay, let's expel them, do you know what's going to happen? It would mean, in Gauteng alone, we have got, I think the income for the landlords is about 80 million. Okay, if you expel them, it would mean you have to compensate the locals with that 80 million. Who would have that? You see what I'm saying? If they go, it would mean the income that the landlords had will no longer have. It was feeding children, taking them to school, doctors and all that. Do you see what I'm saying? So this would mean if we are to build a solution for the problem, it's a solution everyone must gain. It must not be at the disadvantage of the other. You know what I'm saying? Sure. This would mean locals, and at the same time, we will actually be destroying the very same township economy, because we will be depriving it of that, capital, that 1% capital, or 85% of that 1%. Do you see what I'm saying? Instead of building on it, sure, let's build on the existing, not destroy the existing. Do you see what I'm saying? Build on the, and through what? Through complementary differences and supplementary similarities. Why I say complementary differences is that, okay, they can be selling products, they can have shops being our outlets. Then we produce, we build, we have producers, and producers sell to them. Do you know what I mean? And they sell to communities. Do you see what I'm saying? We have created jobs here. Do you see what I mean? And these jobs, this will mean people will have money and they go and buy from them. Do you understand that? We all gain. This would mean those who are receiving, the landlords who are receiving the money, from them, do not actually forfeit that money. Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
Yes, it means with them to grow. Do you see? And with us here, we have created jobs because we have manufacturers that are supplying them. Do you see what I mean?
Now, Tshabalala, I think that also needs a conversation on its own with regards. And then you owe us another conversation when we're going to speak about black consciousness. We're also going to be talking about the formation of the regulatory framework.
Yes.
That really speaks to protecting even the townships, people and those who will be participating, who will be also producing within the townships, and then you owe us that conversation. But for now, let's make a pause. Let's take a pause, and then we then say we'll come back and express all these issues. There's many things that are really happening in the country, and I just want to thank you for honoring this invite to be part of the conversation on the Abuti Rams show. Colleagues, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. It's not a stop. We're not stopping this conversation. We're continuing with the conversations. And if you are watching this video right now, I want you to raise these issues. If you feel that Mr. Tshabalala didn't express himself more, you can also put those questions on the comment section on our YouTube and also on the social media platforms such as Twitter. On Twitter, we are available as @Abuti Rams Show, and also on Facebook as Abuti Rams Show. And you can express this concerns that you have, and you raise all these questions, and we'll try to bring him on the show again to speak about more of developing the small businesses as they come from SASMEC. And thank you so much for staying tuned and watching till this far and being part of the conversation. And see you next time as we go into our second season of the Abuti Rams show. Stay blessed.